Hi, my name is Paramjeet Sembi, and I am going to be doing my week 11 digestion portfolio presentation on the gastric phase of digestion. This is just the title slide here. So first we see a slide here of the stomach, which serves as an aid to digest food, digestion through the secretion of gastrin, acids, enzymes, and paracrine excretions. And the stomach also has defense mechanisms. So you have mucus cells that secrete mucus, forming a physical barrier to the acid. You also have bicarbonate, which creates a chemical buffer barrier. And all of this protects the stomach from the acid that the body has. So we're going to go into talking about the gastric phase. So gastric phase generally begins once the food enters the stomach. This stimulates a series of short reflexes. It involves the stomach to become distended, in presence of amino acids in the lumen. So you have activation of endocrine glands and enteric neurons, and then you have hormones, neurotransmitters, and paracrine molecules that help the motility, and secretion of the stomach. So receptive relaxation, this is neurally mediated. It occurs when food from the esophagus arrives and the stomach relaxes to accommodate for the increased volume. It regulates the rate at which food enters the small intestine. Then you have the upper portion, which holds food while the lower portion is busy digesting the food. The distal half of the stomach, there's peristaltic waves that push, which is just like the muscles of the stomach contracting. They push food towards the pylorus. It mixes with acid and other digestive enzymes, and so you get the creation of chyme, which is digested food. So small amounts of chyme go into the duodenum, which is the next part of the stomach. All of this is achieved with neural control and is stimulated just by the distension of the stomach. So the lumen of the stomach is lined with mucus, producing epithelium with the gastric pits that lead to gastric glands. And these gastric glands are responsible for producing gastric acid, so HCl, which we see here, enzymes, hormones, and other paracrine molecules. So what are the gastric secretions that we have? We have G cells. They release gastrin. So they promote acid secretion. They work directly on the parietal cells. They stimulate histamine release. Acid secretions, we have the parietal cells, which secrete gastric acid. And gastric acid is responsible for release and activation of pepsin to digest proteins. So the HCl, the gastric acid, will denature proteins by breaking disulfide and hydrogen bonds. Then you have D cells, which release somatostatin. Acid is also responsible for killing bacteria and other ingested microorganisms, so that way you don't get sick every time that you eat something. And it also inactivates salivary amylase, so stopping carbohydrate digestion in the mouth. So moving on to other gastric secretions, we have enzyme secretions. So the stomach produces two types of enzymes. There's pepsin and there's gastric lipase. So pepsin's secreted by Chief cells. It's the inactive form of pepsinogen, and carries out the initial digestion of protein. Then you have gastric lipase, which is co-secreted, so secreted at the same time with pepsin, and it helps to break down triglycerides. And then also in the gastric phase, there's the paracrine excretions. So we have histamine, which is secreted by enterochromaffin-like cells. They stimulate, and these are secreted in response to gastrin and acetylcholine stimulation. This diffuses to the parietal cells, which stimulates acid secretion by combining with H2 receptors. So something to note here is that a lot of people that have things like GERD, so gastric esophageal reflux disease, A lot of that is because of, there might be either overstimulation of acid in the stomach and it comes up the esophagus. And one of the ways to treat that is actually by using an H2 receptor antagonist. And that actually works to reduce the acid and also helps to relieve those, the heartburn-like sensations. And there's other, things that you can do also. Patients, people should definitely be sitting up after they eat. And avoiding certain foods also, because that'll exacerbate the acid secretion. And then we have somatostatin, that's secreted by D cells. This actually serves as a negative feedback for the gastric phase in the secretions. So it shuts down acid secretion directly and indirectly by decreasing gastrin and histamine secretion. It also works to inhibit pepsinogen excretion. And then we have intrinsic factor, which works with B12 to absorb vitamins. So a lot of people that might, have gone through a gastric bypass, they are missing parts of their stomach, so, they don't have the parts of the intrinsic factor to help them absorb vitamins. So it's important, if someone does go to surgery for something like a gastric bypass or a pylorectomy, that they are sure to take some supplements. Okay, and so that is the gastric phase of digestion. Everything came from Silverthorne. And thank you for listening. Take care. Bye.